Hello guys, it's Ron Hope back with another video. Today I want to talk about why this Londo mousepad is probably one of the best starter glass mousepads you can get. It has a surface that's really conducive for someone to actually learn how to use it on a glass mousepad. I'll make some comparisons to this Fresh Beyond mousepad. This one is a lot faster of a mousepad. And I also do a comparison to this Artisan Raiden Mid, which is another kind of popular branded kind of cloth mouse pad, and kind of see how the Londo kind of compares to these. So like I said, the Londo is a very unique mouse pad because I think the actual surface has this like almost smooth texture that can kind of have a little bit more friction than you're kind of used to on a pure, I guess, glass mouse pad. So you're not slipping and sliding like crazy, but it actually kind of grips your mouse a little bit. And I just find that to be a little bit different experience because it is still really, really fast, but you don't feel like you're uncontrolled. I feel like it gives it kind of a lot better, kind of user friendly. Your first time using it, you can really control your mouse a lot better versus I feel like on just a pure glass mouse pad, I feel like any micro etch I do, like micro movement, I can really see my like aim kind of shake a lot when I'm kind of shooting, and this one really gets rid of that. And like I actually tested on my friend too, where she like actually played with this and she was really just adapted to it like that fast. So it's kind of like it's pretty easy to use. You don't have to be a super experienced person, and I feel like that's what's going to make this mousepad really stand out from, I guess, the pack, right? But of course, glass mousepad, what's the benefits? What do I like about it? Honestly, I think glass mousepad are really kind of the apex of mousepads, to be honest. I feel like when you're using a lot of cloth, they're a little spongy and a little squishy. For example, on my Artisan mousepad, you can definitely feel the friction and almost you can feel the drag as you kind of move your mouse across, especially when you have these like mouse with these bigger skates. You just feel even more friction as you're kind of moving it, and you really do feel like the mouse pad is actually slowing you down in comparison to like a glass mouse pad. And it gets to the point where like when you go glass and you go back to cloth, you just feel like you're fighting your mouse pad. That's pretty much how I feel. And the funny thing is, this is like the Raiden, so this is like a super fast cloth mouse pad, but even in comparison, it just feels slow. That's kind of my experience of using glass. Of course, I do think cloth mouse pads do have a benefit, is that it's just kind of nice to rest your hand on it. It's not like hard like glass, and it doesn't really kind of stick if you get sweaty. It's very kind of just like, comfortable to use. So I think that is one reason why people would go cloth. But really, I do feel like the speed and the slowness. That's a feeling that I really couldn't let up. But I also think it, like I said, it's hard when you kind of go so fast that you go backwards. It feels slow. So yeah, I think that's one reason why you go glass. I think with the glass mouse pad, since you're not fighting your mouse pad, you're really just telling your hand where to go exactly. So you're not really kind of, like I'm resisting, I need to push down or anything. You're just kind of moving your mouse exactly where it is, and your hand just gets there really quickly. And I find it to be very useful if you're playing games like Marvel Rivals or like Overwatch 2, where you're kind of like tracking your target while they're moving, and you can really kind of see the target and kind of like track and move them, because there's literally no friction. You don't really get stuck on the mouse pad. Like if you play an FPS game, you definitely see when people's kind of mouse pad gets stuck and their aim will just kind of stop, and the more you move, the harder it is for them to hit. Versus with a mouse pad like this, the more they move, it's really not going to help them, because this mouse pad can move exactly where you want. It doesn't always slow down when you change direction and stuff, so you can really track your targets like really insanely well. I think that's definitely the biggest benefit of this mouse pad. But it also helps you with like your consistency and your flicks, because a glass mouse pad really doesn't get dirty, right? Like if you get dirty, they come with this like mouse, I guess, cleaner. If there's some dust, you can hear it, make it slightly more friction sounds, and you can just literally just wipe it off. But if it gets dirty, you can literally just add like, and I probably would just use like honestly like dishwasher soap to get off some of the oils and some stuff. You can really just apply that, wipe it off, and then just clean it off, and then can dry instantly. Favorite mouse pad always shows my HyperX. I think this particular one, I used it for like 6 years straight, like something insane, and I washed it many times to kind of clean the dirt, but you can just see where the slow spots are. Like this white stuff, like literally, I mean, this thing also I think has a coating, so that thing definitely got stripped, and no matter how many times you clean it, once you hit the spot, your mouse just moves really slow. So this inconsistency across your mouse pad really hurts. So it kind of makes you like, if you want to get a more consistent mouse pad, you got to buy more mouse pads, because if it's a new mouse pad, it'll prefer like new, versus a glass mouse pad really isn't going to slow down over time. So it's kind of like you buy it once and you don't have to buy it again, versus a cloth. It's more, I guess, a disposable mouse pad. You buy it once and then you're going to have to buy another one if you want to keep up your tip-top performance. So I think there is honestly a reasonable reason why you should get a glass mouse pad, because it can last you a lot longer and it's easier to clean, which means your consistency is just even better. Like I said, there's less resistance, less friction. All these things I think will just help players just be way more consistent over time. I think that's really the biggest difference. I think it's actually kind of underrated that people don't talk about how easy it is to clean and be consistent on a glass mouse pad. I think that will actually make a big difference. And it's funny because like you'll see even like pro gamers and other people and just see their mouse pad and just see how dirty it is. But like, once you get used to a dirty mouse pad, I'm sure like you understand the slow spots and get used to it. But I still feel like, having the cleanest and the best mouse pad where you don't have to adapt to different changing environments, but all your environment is like this constant, will really, really help you perform just at the same level all the time. Now it's very interesting if you actually look at this mouse pad. It actually has this kind of like frosted look to it. If you actually look at this mouse pad, this is actually in focus because it has this almost like frosted glass. It actually helps your mouse kind of track. So, because like if you have something that's very glass-like, it's sometimes your laser won't actually like hit it, because this is like a black mouse pad and it's frosted. You're really not going to have that issue, and your mouse really tracks every single time. So I had zero issues with that. If I flip my mouse pad to the back, you can actually see my oily grease hands over here, but you actually see that it has actually 4 legs, or positioning on both 4 legs. So for you to like actually keep on your desk, I find it to not move at all. But of course, I would say there's some mouse pads that have the whole entire bottom as like a base, and those would probably be even stickier, while these are only in the 4 corners. I think another important point about this glass mouse pad is actually the fact that it's actually scratch resistant. So they have this, like, I guess they call it micro itch. But I find that I've actually scratched it a few times with my ring and stuff like that. And my cats actually stood on top of it too. It's funny, they actually share photos of that for some mouse pads. So the other glass mouse pad I've tested is this Fresh Beyond glass mouse pad. And this one I find to be like, I mean, honestly, them next to each other, they seem very similar, right? This is kind of frosted as well. Kind of see the logo is just a little bit, blurred. But honestly, when it actually comes to the texture, they're actually different, right? Like this one definitely has way more like kind of a friction. It almost sticks to your hand a little bit more. This is more glass-like. I actually noticed that my arm doesn't really stick to the Londo really at all. So like I didn't really use a sleeve at all. So like a lot of times people will use like an arm sleeve like this. I actually used to use it a lot with the Fresh Beyond, because if I kind of started sweating a little bit, it would stick to it. But I really didn't have that issue with the Londo as much. Like honestly, I didn't even use a sleeve at all with this. So I think that's definitely a kind of benefit of the different texture. I feel like this texture really is very conducive of like your skin and kind of not sticking to it, which I find to be cool. Obviously, like if you're less try hard and you don't want to wear a sleeve, then I feel like the Londo is probably a good option too because of that. But speed is definitely the name of the game, right? So between the Fresh Beyond and the Londo is a lot easier to get used to. When I first started with the Fresh Beyond, this was actually my first glass mouse pad I ever used. My hand, like every single little jitter was moving around, and it actually took me a while to get used to it. But eventually I got used to it, but it was definitely a bigger learning curve, like I said, and it kind of alluded to with something like this that has even more minimal friction versus the Londo. I think if you're just using it from a cloth mouse pad and going to glass the first time, it's just going to help you and aid you in having a control. But it is nowhere as slow as a cloth mouse pad. So like even compared to like my Artisan mouse pad, it's really not anywhere close to as slow as this is. It's significantly faster and more consistent, so it's not really a slow mouse pad either. But I think there's just a minor difference that you can feel if you're really experienced with this type of stuff, and I think that's kind of what I noticed. think the last nerdy tidbit is that the glass mouse pad performs differently on different kind of feet and different weights of your mice. Now, none of these mice are really that heavy, honestly, but I would say like something like this with dot skates and really light, you can definitely feel that this one kind of glides like crazy. Your mouse really moves really fast. Something like this, which is a little heavier with bigger skates, there's going to be a little bit more friction. It's going to stick to it a little bit more, so it's going to be a little bit easier to control with a kind of bigger mouse. Now, I feel like that would help you if you're trying to get a little bit more control versus something like this. Like, you know, you're going to need a little bit more experience with a smaller mouse like this. And I mean, the Logitech, it's even a little bit heavier than, this is a Logitech Dex. It's a little bit heavier than the Viper V3 Pro. So my conclusion is this: if you're really looking for a great glass mouse pad with some actual control, a little bit of friction to help you get used to it, not as wildly, slippery fast, then I think the Londo is actually a good option. I think, especially for people for the first time getting a glass mouse pad, I feel like this is the perfect first time glass mouse pad for a lot of people. And that's what I would recommend. Even if you're experienced and you find, you know, the pure glass experience to be a little bit too kind of slippery, slidey, and hard to control, then maybe going to this one will actually help you as well. So I think this mouse pad definitely is a little bit different from other ones I've tried on the market. And I think it does stand out in that one way.